So you can have access to this
Neat.
as soon as I... Hi, my name is Jane Powell. Welcome to Community Connections, brought to you by the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. Our guest today is Jean Simpson, Executive Director of Manna Meal, West Virginia. Welcome, Jean.
Welcome. Thank you.
So let's just jump right in. Tell me about Manna Meal.
Well, Manna Meal has been in existence for 38 years. It was created by Reverend Jim Lewis at St. John's Episcopal Church. He was the minister at the church at that time and realized how many people were coming to the door asking for food. He got a group of people together and researched the fact of the need in Charleston. He wanted to make sure that he wasn't duplicating services. And with this group, they realized that there was definitely a need in Charleston to feed people. So they started feeding them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and it was all the members of the church got together. At one point, when they realized that the need was great and the amount of people that came to the door continued to grow, there was a little bit of an upset in the church. You know, the wear and tear of all these people coming in and out of a building is hard on a building, and it took away from the church in some ways. So it was a little bit of a battle on, you know, people staying or leaving the church, and I understand a lot of people left the church because of it. But Manna Meal has been there for 38 years, and we feed 2 meals a day. We feed 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We're the only social service that is open 7 days a week. So needless to say, we get a lot of people that have just dropped off the interstates. And since we've been around for so long, we've got a lot of people that will say, you know, if you need something to eat, go to Manna Meal. So I get the people when they first hit town, usually. So with that, then we have to know all the other social service agencies and what they provide, because we get a lot of questions.
And when you say 2 meals a day, is that, what 2 meals is that?
We're serving breakfast and lunch. Breakfast is from 8 until 9, and lunch is from 11:30 until 1, except on Sunday, and we share the auditorium with the church, and so it's 12:30 to 2.
Wow, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
That's just a blessing for so many people.
Well, it is a blessing. It really, truly is.
But it's also a big project, so how are you funded? Let's talk about that.
Well, the project right now is costing us about $750,000 a year to run. We get a little bit of help from the federal government. We basically, through the years, have stayed away from federal grants, and because of the complication of them. There was never really a grant writer on board until I came around. Of course, I'm not a great grant writer, but I will dabble, and I don't do too bad. But the federal government, the grants are difficult. And the board decided that if we stayed away from grants, they didn't want the federal government to start projecting how their program should be run. So the money basically comes from the community of Charleston and individuals and businesses from Charleston. So that's my responsibility, is to reach out to the community and knock on doors and create positions for volunteers and get the word out of our need.
Okay. So speaking of volunteers, Manna Meal has a small staff, but I'm sure you rely on your group of volunteers.
We do. The volunteers are our backbone, without a doubt. We've got 130 volunteers that are scheduled every single week. And these people come in at 7 o'clock in the morning along with us, and then they help us prep food, they help us get ready for breakfast, they help us serve breakfast, then they help us, another group comes in and helps us serve lunch and prep lunch, and then stay and help us clean up. So that 130, it's a lot of work, juggling that many volunteers, because they are volunteers. I mean, that's the glory of being a volunteer, is you come and go as you please.
Right.
So when you're there and you're available, you're there, and then when you're not and you've got other matters to take care of, then they don't show up. So it's difficult sometimes, but it's absolutely the backbone of our program.
So I'm sure you have we know you have your staff, and then you have your core group of volunteers. If someone wanted to become a new volunteer with Manna Meal, how does that work? How would they get in contact with you?
Basically, Camelia Snover is our volunteer coordinator, and what she does is she sits down with the person and just finds out a little bit about their lives and how many hours they've got to offer and what days a week that they can work. She takes their name, address, phone number, email address, and then she starts just looking for a spot to put them in. So you've got people that are out and they're sick, or they're going to be out of town for a couple months, or whatever it could be. And she usually can get you in somewhere during the day that works conveniently for you. Once that happens, then the doors are wide open. You can just jump in and stay and help in any way you possibly can.
Right. And when we talk about volunteers, I'm guessing you have all ages of volunteers.
We
and
really
all
do.
demographics of volunteers.
Yes, we do, for sure. I've got one man that drives from Ripley to work in the garden. And so I mean, that's a long haul, and he'll come every Saturday, religiously, and help us work for about 3 or 4 hours and then turn around and go home. Our age group that we start kids at, if you want to leave them there by yourself, is age 5th grade. Okay, now you can come younger if your parent stays with you. We've got one family that brings their 3-year-old, and that 3-year-old sits up on a stool and hands out napkins.
What a nice way to teach community service.
Exactly. So we try to get groups in there, and we try to get families in there, but it's so rewarding.
Yes. Now, when you were talking, you mentioned the garden, so we haven't discussed that yet. Please tell us about the garden.
Well, I've got a friend. She has now become a very close friend. In fact, we call each other sisters, and her name is Myra Dolan. She came to me as a volunteer when I first got to Manna Meal 7 years ago, and she said, wouldn't it be nice if you could grow your own food? At that point, we had a real hard time getting fresh vegetables into Manna Meal. Needless to say, Kroger's is absolutely wonderful. And what they give us is any fruit or vegetables that are blemished. And just like anybody, when you go to the grocery store, you will avoid anything that is split, cracked, or blemished. You want something that the shelf life is going to last.
Absolutely.
So you leave what's been what is damaged. And so we get all that in. And Myra said, wouldn't it be nice if we had fresh, wonderful, great produce? And I said, sure. So then we started the garden project. So we've been gardening on private property on Rutledge Road for the last 5 years. The most food we've ever produced is 3,000 pounds, and we were extremely proud of it. At some points, we've got enough fruits, enough vegetables that we can share with local food pantries, the Rourke Sullivan Lifeway Center, the men's shelter, and Sojourners, the women's shelter, too.
And do you have a partner with the garden?
Well, no. My partner is Myra.
Okay.
You mean partner as far as?
That's a lot of work. To plant and weed and harvest a garden.
Well, it is an awful lot of work. So it's not only Myra, my partner, that helps me organize everything. She comes and works every single week too. But we've also actually partnered with West Virginia State University Land Grant at Institute, and they have just been wonderful. Their whole teaching staff, the agricultural teaching staff, has come out to the garden and helped us work. They've let us borrow equipment from them. They've let us borrow people with knowledge, and it's been a really good partnership so far.
And with that kind of expert helping you, you can have almost a year-round garden.
Well, we can if I if I wasn't quite so lazy. But I kind of look forward to November, that we close everything
Okay.
down and we wait till spring. But I've got kale and cabbage and lettuce sitting under covers right now.
Nice.
That as soon as the weather breaks, it'll come right back up. So
That's wonderful.
But we've got 269 people last year that helped us in the garden. And some of the people come every single week, and some of the people, I ran into a woman the other day at the grocery store, and she was just so apologetic that she had only been to the garden one time. And, you know, she's a nurse, she's working full time, she's got a husband, she's got kids, you know, and I just said, you know, we do what we can do, is all we can do.
Right.
You know, it's the truth. So the garden has been, it has been a wonderful experience for me. I love to garden, and but it's brought us a different group of volunteers. And it's brought a different sense to the table of the necessity of eating fresh food and the health benefits from it. So what we have concentrated on in the last 4 to 5 years is changing the diets of the people that come to Manna Meal to eat. So instead of having typical soup kitchen fare,
Right.
we are lucky enough to have always fresh salad and vegetables and fruit along with a main course.
Which is just wonderful, because you want to fill them up, but you want to give them a healthy diet.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's so important.
And so we talked about that Manna Meal is 365 days a year. Is there a time frame? Because, well, that's for volunteers and for people that need your services. Is there a time during the year when your services are more in need? Or how does that fluctuate?
The summer months are always the busiest months. And the reason is the majority of people that are come to Manna Meal and eat, their means of travel is on foot or bicycle or public transportation. A lot of people have got cars, but the majority don't. So they come from a further distance in the warmer weather. So, and for instance, in July of this past year, our numbers went up to 480 a day.
Wow.
And now they've dropped down to 410. But it's just the distance that people have to travel. So the more people, we see the most people in the warmer months than the winter months.
Okay.
Unless the weather's fair.
Right. Because of transportation, which makes total sense. If let's use me as an example. If I have something that I want to donate, other than time, I understand that I can always donate my time. But if I have something, for example, a party at my house, and I have more than I can use, is that something I could bring to Manna Meal?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. We weigh all the food that comes into the back door. And that is exactly the example. People that have business meetings and not all the people show up, or there's catering events, or in-house home parties, whatever the event can be. Any food that comes in the back door, we weigh everything, and at that point then we change that into money, and that determines our budget. So last year, for instance, out of that $750,000, $279,000 worth of food was donated, exactly the way that you are saying. So that is a huge amount. And thank God the back door is swinging wildly this time of year because of all the functions and the parties and the generosity of people this time of year.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jean Simpson, Executive Director of Manna Meal. If someone has more information, is there a phone number and a website?
Yes, there is. The website is www.mannameal.com.
Okay.
Very simple. And the phone number is 304-345-7121.
Great. So I hope everyone has contact information for Manna Meal. And thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll come back next time for Community Connections, brought to you by the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. Hi, my name is Jane Powell. Welcome to Community Connections, a show brought to you by the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. Today our guest is Rick Cavender, Executive Director of East End Main Street. We're happy to have you, Rick. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jane, for having me on today.
Well, I have to start out this interview by saying I am an East End girl.
Yeah.
It's where I grew up. It's where my heart is. And so I'm happy to have you here to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to talk about it.
So East End Main Street, why don't you get us started and just tell us a little bit about what that is in your history?
Yeah, so we were formed in 2002. We were nationally certified through the National Trust for Historic Preservation's Main Street Center in Washington, D.C. And the reason we were formed was the acknowledgement of the fact that our district, with so much historic significance, but also so much economic importance for the whole city of Charleston, the fact that the state capitol